Of course, lovely.
Welcome. Today I'm with Ikenna, who is wonderful. Ikenna Anyabuike, which I just read because I realised I didn't know your full name properly. Thank goodness for Zoom names.
Thank
Who
goodness.
I know as this brilliant writer and poet and musician from Galway. No doubt a brilliant, lots of other amazing artistic things as well we'll discover along the way. And I'm really lucky to speak to you because, as we just discussed, you're literally in thesis mode, handed in a thesis, doing a few other final bits. So I'm super grateful.
Thank
And
you so much. Thanks for having me, Charlotte. It's always a
always.
pleasure.
And we're all treated to your amazing purple dressing gown, which I really enjoy.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I have a blue one as well. The blue one's a bit more luxurious. I think it's made out of cashmere or something. This one's kind of the one I put when things are getting very scaldy.
I actually
Things are getting
mentioned,
down to the nitty gritty.
I like it. I mentioned a purple robe in my show, so listen out for that.
Can't wait
Um,
to come and see it, actually.
yes, we'll get you in. But I want to ask you, Ikenna, about ritual. What does that mean for you in any direction you want to take it? If I put that on a plate in front of you.
Well, I guess I'll start, at the simplest direction, which is ritual is kind of, it's kind of doing, you could argue in its most base form, it's it's like practice plus meaning over time. So we all have our own little rituals. You could go, oh, I get up every day and I listen to music. That's my ritual. You go downstairs or you might drink coffee. That's your ritual. And we might ascribe different meanings to the rituals we do. And so that's kind of ritual on a very micro individualistic level, but that kind of expands. When you think about it, all life is just a series of rituals. Much of humanity um, is basically ritual. The whole kind of coming of age, you're a child, then you're a teenager, you go through the ritual of going through school, and then you graduate, and we all wear fancy hats and stuff. And
Yeah.
if you become a lawyer, you go on to law school. If you become a barrister, you get a wig, you get a gown. If you're a preacher, there's all these kind of rituals that transcend across life, and each one is culture dependent. So it kind of depends on what angle you wish to take at it. There's rituals to do with music. There's rituals with silence. Some rituals have. I'm going like full Richard Schechner here. I just realized. I think that's his name. Yeah, but he has this kind of interesting performance book where he talks about the that some rituals leave you changed while others don't, and then that kind of dictates the importance. Because if you think about it, it's like a wedding is just a massive ritual, but it doesn't really leave you changed, but it does leave you changed because now in the eyes of the law, your 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 tax bracket, your level of autonomy over each other,
Yeah.
your relationship, I guess, is changed. But the funny thing, you could have all those things outside of that just through, I guess, if you had like enough lawyers through doing contracts and stuff like that that state that. But it's actual ritual of the wedding that solidifies that, which is interesting. And
Mhm.
then a courtroom has all these rituals as well. There's a lot of things you cannot do in court. Um, yeah, just a lot of things you cannot do in court, and it leaves you changed, especially if it's a serious investigation or of some kind. A guilty verdict means that you are changed, and even the banging of the gavel to solidify that change, you kind of have these markers to solidify change in a lot of rituals. And then you kind of have faith-based rituals like going to mass, praying, um, just praying by yourself, but also the ritual of, going and saying the sacrament and communion and the blood of Christ. There's much of life is symbolism
Yeah. I
and
think
ritual.
I was going to think as performers, like I had this really great, I was actually a music teacher. And he said, don't ever do the same thing before you go on stage. He's like, always do it in a different order. And I am so grateful to him because uh, I think you can get a bit precious about because it can feel kind of magical. When something goes well, you're like, I need to do exactly the same things to allow this to go well again.
Mm.
so I need to do my voice warm-ups in exactly the same way and my stretches in the same way. And then if something goes wrong or if somebody interrupts you in them, you think, oh no, it's like not wearing your lucky pants at the football match or whatever. It can leap into superstition. But I also think there are some things that are really beautifully ritualized in performance or in certain religious acts that are really comfortingly the same, like maybe the moment, say if you're in the wings just before you go on or whatever it is. So I guess that I was wondering if you could give us like maybe a ritual that you've developed or stolen from somebody you thought was really nice, like one of yours that you just love. Like you mentioned playing music in the morning.
Hmm.
Delicious.
Um, well, a ritual that just keeps me sane in my day-to-day life is definitely listening to music. I will almost always leave my house with some type of device that either enables me to listen to music or play music at all times. I very much so. Music is my comfort space, especially if I can't get up out of bed. I always have my earphones beside me or a little robot. I can be like, robot, play me this song. Whether it's like a Google Nest or an Alexa or whatever you call it. And the sound of music and the music matching my mood, that's very much so a ritual. When it comes to stage, I kind of avoid rituals.
Yeah.
I feel like for that exact reason, but I also feel like I just kind of, get exasperated when actors have these really long, complex rituals, and it's like, isn't this like our job, to just be able to just get into character? We can just get in there. Like, I don't mind like a 5 minute, 10 minute thing, but if it's more than 30 minutes, I'm kind of like, come on, like I'm in character, come on, let's go. But it's more so for me, it's more so headspace. Like the rituals aren't really physical, they're more mental. Like if I'm doing a poem or if I'm acting a scene, the the mental connections I'm trying to get in my head are trying to make me as emotionally unstable and as a result vulnerable as possible. And when I say unstable, it doesn't mean like that I'm kind of just going all over the place, like all over the stage, kind of screaming and flinging my arms in the air. Although I have done that and that's been fun. But like, it's more so the instability to call on any emotion that I want, regardless of how incongruent that emotion might be to how I'm feeling at the moment. So it's kind of like that level, that kind of uncertain territory where you're feeling everything at once, so you can just select what you want. You're feeling kind of, it's like you're drowning in it, so you can go, I want a little bit of fear here. I want to color this line with a little bit of anger. I want to kind of say this line with a little bit of despondency. I want to color this movement with a little bit of sadness. I want you to feel sadness radiating off me. Or I want you to feel like oblivious joy kind of radiating off me. That might not be congruent with how my mood is at that moment.
Yeah.
So uh I I would say just kind of that's my ritual, is doing a lot of kind of mental work to get in that space, and also to kind of protect myself, because I do it even when I'm performing poems or songs, and it can be really, or especially when I'm writing plays. Oh God, when I'm writing plays is actually probably when I do it the most, because I want to push my mind into all these emotions so I can write in such a way that feels really natural and you can feel the intensity. But the truth is, you kind of have to protect yourself as well, because you know, rituals can hurt if not done properly,
Yeah.
or they can be destructive if not properly utilized. It's it's a fine line, and I think, especially in the arts industry, taking care of yourself is as equal, or probably I would say sometimes even more important than doing the stuff to get you to break down. Because if you break down, like, your emotions and are able to translate that into a page or a poem, but you can't put yourself back together again, then it's just going to become kind of like a ritual, but a very toxic kind of masochistic one.
Yeah. I think that's so important because it's kind of like I guess like you're saying, we're talking about spaces, like, and sometimes when you're like working with yourself, you have to create the space for yourself to jump in to be able to do all of that work. But then, yeah, you do need to be able to jump out again and be intact, having just done something quite wild. And it's like how to do that. I talked with JP around structure and what forms you might like to hold. And I just wanted to mention here, I really enjoy your poetry, and I was reading it on Medium, and I love the, you know, the Italian word stanza, like which means like room, like little room. Because I do feel like reading your poetry, it's like you you're stepping into a different time, a different flow of time from normal time, and I can feel the different, like a different atmosphere when I'm reading it. And that is the gift of poetry generally, but I really feel it with your work. And I think, yeah, an understanding of like the artist, some of the artistry is maybe not even in making the art, it's being able for you, the artist, to be able to do that and then step out of that time and be in more usual flow or something. Yeah, it's mysterious and interesting, and also maybe quite practical and technical. I don't know.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely inclined to agree. I was talking with a poet by the name of Stephen James Smith. Excellent poet. Check him out. And he was telling me he has this poem called "Dublin You Are," and it's a gorgeous poem that kind of relates his joy and his also despondency towards Dublin. So it's filled with all these mixed emotions, and it's kind of gorgeous to see it live because I was opening, not opening for him. I was kind of coming into a set to do a few poems, but he told me, we had a discussion, and he told me that when he says this poem, he's imagining a specific person there, and he'd kind of say the poem as if he was saying it to them. And he has a few poems like that, and it's really clear when you see it live because there's this kind of emotional tension that you wouldn't get, or even other poems that may not even be my favorite, or I didn't particularly, and I told him this, that maybe there was one or two that I didn't particularly like, but when he said it live, it clicked for me because the voice I was using to read that poem was not the voice that was intended to read that poem. And that's the kind of lovely thing about a script or poetry or dialogue, is that, I could take, and I have taken lines from Othello, and you could play it as a lovable rogue. You could play it as a guy who's really vulnerable, but ultimately kind of blinded by his ability to see the good in people, or you could play it as someone who is of great military valor, who's decorated, and so who is a little bit arrogant and a little bit dangerous, or you could have that kind of blend of all kind of three coming in and out and forth. And what's really great about that play is Iago doesn't really ever say why he hates Othello. There's hints that maybe he kind of like Desdemona, and he feels that he deserves everything Othello has. There's jealousy, there's all these emotions running through what he says, but he never comes out and explicitly goes, "This is why I hate this. This is what this guy has done." And so there's kind of a wealth of content behind that you can pull from, and you can kind of color it however way you want.
Yeah.
Um, and I
There's also
think,
a bit where there's also a bit where you're like, do you love Othello, Iago? Because you know when he sort of imagines Othello in bed, doesn't he have this speech where he sort of imagines, and he really imagines it? He's like, your leg flung over. It's like, chill out, Iago, calm down. Like,
yeah,
woo, yeah. But I think, yeah. There's that erotic tension between these two men in the army. What a great story.
yeah.
And then also that jealousy is so intense. Like, it's so, his jealousy is so intense, like it's bleeding out into everything. But yeah, it is. There's so much going on in that. Sorry, you were saying something. I got
Oh,
distracted.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of dead right in the sense that my favorite plays are either plays I would like to direct, because I do not consider myself a director, at least not yet, in terms, but plays that I feel. So I'm actually quite weird in the sense that I have never really directed a play, but I know if I directed a play, it would be a play that I understood. And not only that I understood, but that I felt that I could add something to. I'm so weird when it comes to I'll write and act all day, but I'm so weird when it comes to something like directing because I feel there's very few scripts I would actually feel that yeah, I can add something that will completely blow people's minds to that. Um but I do have a list.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was just going to say there's the British director Matthew Zia, and he was like a DJ before he was a British director, before he was a theatre director, and people would be like, "Wow, that's so crazy! You're a DJ," and he was like, "Well, because I'm just thinking about you, and you like produce nights, and you bring people together, and you put stuff on," and I'm like, he was like, "Well, being a DJ, you're still designing somebody's night, and you're still leading them to like peaks and troughs," and the way he spoke about it was so cool, and I was like, I just am like, yeah, I love that you're like, oh, I'm not a director, but I have plans. Because I'm like, yes, because you're kind of already doing similar things with the skills. You're shaping an evening, you're putting exciting people in a room together or different artists in the room together and seeing what bubbles up. And yeah, similarly with in a play or yeah, especially, and I know you write your own work as well, like you how to present, yeah, is exciting. And yeah, I think I would be interested to see what you direct. Yeah,
thank you.
definitely.
I think something I never really thought about it like that. That's actually kind of cool. I think the funny thing is when I do a show, especially when it's music, it's it's very meticulous, even though I kind of specifically design it to feel quite off the cuff
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
quite casual.
yeah.
And I there's this element, and sometimes I ramp up the theatricality because I'm interested to see what will happen, and now I'm getting to the stage where I'm like thinking of hiring dancers and stuff like that and people acting to come on stage and do certain crazy things. But it's so each time I'm experimenting that little bit more. But what was really cool is I went to this DJ yesterday to work out my set. His name is DJ Green, and I went to him, and I was in his studio, and I was like, so this is all my instrumentals, and I was like, okay, let's go through the set because this is how I do the set. And he had this notebook, and he was like, I have never written this much in my notebook, and I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. He was like, no, this is actually really really cool. I was like, what's a set usually like? He's like, usually I come in and it's kind of like a few here's the tracks I'm gonna be doing and we just kind of go through. But I have cues because sometimes I'll talk in between sets. Some songs go into other songs, and it's all kind of meticulously laid out, and it's like a story told through different music, reorganized. And when I'm going through the set, there's like there'll be a cue. I won't go, so this is this song, so this is this song, so this is this song. I might tell you after the song, but I kind of don't like to go, so now I'm going to
Yeah,
play.
yeah, yeah.
So it's more so I'm talking and then the cue will happen and then we just go straight into that song. And what I really like is the way I do it. I've noticed that one, people love it because they're constantly engaged. There's not really a moment where they can disengage because they don't know when a song is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to catch them off guard. And that was, I remember I was walking down Shop Street and this guy who'd been to a gig I'd done, who I didn't know, he just came up to me. He's like, "Oh man, I recognize you from that gig." And I was like, "Oh, thanks for coming by." He was like, "Man, I loved it. It felt like theater." And I was like, "It's funny you mention that."
Yeah.
It's and I do think I love theater. I ultimately love theater, and I do think the like theater is the best type of ritual in terms of we have all these rules and all these expectations. Like I went to see Abomination in the Lyric Theater. Absolutely fantastic. It's like an opera. It's a verbatim theatrical opera, and it's insane. And I loved it. And if it was ever shown again, I'd go right back up to see it. But it was interesting seeing that kind of social script, because I was at the opera, and it's very much so what you'd expect the opera to be like, but the play was so visceral and lively and so contemporary that there was this lovely jarring of expectations while still maintaining that operatic style because it is an opera, but
Mhm.
it's phenomenal. Also, the lighting and the actual set design was excellent, and so was the orchestra. But I think those are my favorite moments in theater, when I read a script and it bucks that ritual in a way, but whilst not being anything else. And what I mean by that is often you get like you see a lot of scripts and they're like great, but you're like, oh, this could have just been like an audiobook
Yeah.
or a radio play or a TV show. It doesn't like this doesn't there's nothing theatrically interesting kind of going on. It's a great script, but it doesn't justify being theater. Whereas I read the script Misty by Anzari Kane.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
seen it?
No, I haven't seen it, but I've seen him on stage in other parts. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was quickly became one of my favorite plays of all time because I read this and I said, I don't see this as anything else but a play. As I don't know how it would work. I don't know how. I don't feel like it could translate to film. I don't think it would work as an audio. There's too much visual stuff happening for it to be a film. There's too much theatrical blending happening for it to be an audiobook. This cannot be anything else but a play. And maybe he'll prove me wrong and make it into a TV show, but that is the stuff I love, seeing plays that, or even a play like Fairview.
I don't
Um,
know. I'm so sorry. Useless.
oh, no, 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 no. It's fine. But I can't remember who wrote Fairview. Who wrote Fairview?
I'll
But
Google it. Put it in the notes.
it's an that's an excellent play, and it wouldn't really work if it was a TV show because it needs that live element and it needs that theatrical space. I love plays like that
Yeah.
that that feel
Where
like they
the form has like is so intentional, and
yeah.
actually all the strictures of the form actually give rise to these amazing surprises and opportunities.
Yeah, and it goes back to that whole thing of everything is a ritual. We have these expectations when we go to a theater that we're going to sit quietly and kind of passively consume art in a way. But theaters, that wasn't the origin, so it's kind of interesting that, rituals can change because originally theaters were like seedy underground nightclubs, they
Yeah.
were outside of the city, they were probably opposite a brothel. People were like having parties in the lower rungs. People were like doing other stuff in the upstairs rungs. It was a wild time, and I think it's interesting to see that element of almost punk theater coming back. You look at a play like another play I really liked was The Death of England. Thought that was absolutely excellent as a script, and one of the few plays to get a sequel, which I thought was equally cool. Death of England, Delroy, two excellent, excellent plays, and I remember watching that first play, thinking this feels undeniably punk because it feels like it is taking your expectations going into theater and doing interesting things with them, even though what we're essentially watching is the continuation of that ritual of theater of that monologue, just a long one handle monologue on stage. So I quite like works like that.
Well, I I loved when you said that you like being caught by surprise or caught off guard, and I'm just so grateful for you catching us off guard. I'm going to leave it there for a moment and then chat to you a little bit after we stop recording. But thank
No
you.
problemo.
Anna. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.